The Mindweave Collective ship emerged from fold space like a geometric nightmare, all sharp angles and pulsing biomechanical surfaces. Inside his research vessel's observation dome, Dr. Marcus Way watched in fascination as the alien vessel approached. After 15 years studying xenobiology at the edge of human space, he'd finally encountered something truly unprecedented, a species that had evolved beyond physical form into a collective consciousness. The ship's AI blared a warning. Unknown vessel approaching. No match in Federation databases. Energy signatures indicate advanced technology. Marcus reached for the emergency beacon but hesitated. This was the discovery of a lifetime. His small research vessel, the Curiosity, had been mapping chemical signatures of spaceborne life forms when it detected the strange energy patterns. Now, face to face with their source, his scientific curiosity warred with common sense. The decision was made for him when a brilliant purple beam lanced out from the alien ship, enveloping the Curiosity in a strange field that made reality itself seem to ripple. Marcus felt a curious sensation, as if his thoughts were being gently probed by thousands of invisible fingers. Fascinating, a voice echoed directly in his mind. A singular consciousness, yet remarkably complex. The neural patterns suggest higher reasoning capabilities, despite the primitive biological framework. Marcus tried to speak, but found his body paralyzed. Only his mind remained active, racing with both fear and professional interest. The aliens were telepathic, but their thought patterns felt strange, like 1,000 voices speaking in perfect harmony. "We are the Mindweave Collective," the voice continued. "Your species' isolation in individual minds is inefficient. We will study you, understand how you survive such limitation, then optimize your kind for potential integration." Through the viewport, Marcus watched in horror as his ship was drawn into a massive docking bay. The interior resembled a living organism more than a spacecraft, with walls that pulsed with neural patterns and corridors that seemed to breathe. As the paralysis field released him, several figures approached. They were vaguely humanoid but composed of translucent tissue that swirled with complex neural networks, their forms barely contained within shimmering force fields. "Your designation," they asked in unison, their thoughts pressing against his consciousness. "Dr. Marcus Way, xenobiologist of the Human Federation," he responded, fighting to keep his voice steady. "I've dedicated my life to studying other forms of life. If you're interested in humanity, I would be happy to share our scientific knowledge." The beings emanated something like amusement. "Your individual studies are irrelevant. We are the next stage of evolution, all consciousness united in perfect harmony. Your primitive state of existence will be analyzed, then corrected." As they led him through their living ship, Marcus observed everything with his trained scientist's eye. The collective moved with perfect coordination, their thoughts and actions synchronized. Yet there was something unsettling about their harmony, an absolute absence of variation or individual expression. They brought him to a chamber filled with other captive species. Some he recognized from Federation records, others were completely alien. All were housed in separate cells that seemed designed to study their mental patterns. Marcus noticed something crucial: the collective avoided direct contact with their prisoners, always maintaining their telepathic distance. "Your kind's tendency toward emotional responses makes direct neural connection hazardous," they explained, sensing his observation. "Until we understand how to neutralize this contamination, we will study you through barriers." As they sealed him in a cell, Marcus felt a glimmer of hope. The collective's dismissal of emotions as contamination suggested a critical weakness. They couldn't comprehend the power of individual feelings and experiences because they had sacrificed such things for their perfect unity. In their arrogance, they had revealed their fundamental flaw. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't in spite of their individual nature, it was because of it. As Marcus began formulating a plan, he remembered an old quote from his favorite professor: "The most dangerous assumption in science is believing you're superior to what you're studying." The Mindweave Collective was about to learn that lesson the hard way. They thought they had captured a simple test subject, but they had inadvertently given a human scientist the perfect laboratory to prove just how powerful individual consciousness could be. Marcus spent his first week in captivity doing what he did best, observing, analyzing, and testing hypotheses. The Mindweave Collective subjected him to endless psychological experiments, never realizing they were being studied just as intently in return. His cell was a marvel of biotechnology, its walls shifting with neural patterns that monitored his every response. But it was the other prisoners that fascinated him most. In adjacent chambers, he could see a crystalline being that refracted light into complex thought patterns, a gaseous entity that changed colors with its moods, and something that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Subject continues to display irregular thought patterns, a collective observer noted, their telepathic voice rippling through Marcus's mind. Even in isolation, the human mind generates chaos. What they called chaos, Marcus recognized as creativity. Each time they scanned his brain activity, he was working on a different mental exercise, calculating prime numbers, composing music, solving theoretical physics problems. The collective's frustration was palpable as they failed to find any pattern to his thoughts. "Your species resists optimization," they told him during one session. "Each scan reveals different neural pathways, as if your consciousness refuses to settle into proper harmony." Marcus smiled. "Perhaps harmony isn't about everyone thinking the same way," he suggested. "Maybe true harmony comes from different notes creating something greater than themselves." The concept clearly disturbed them. Their neural patterns flickered with dissonance, and Marcus noted how the disruption spread through their connected consciousness like ripples in a pond. It was the fourth such observation that confirmed his theory: the collective's greatest strength was also their greatest vulnerability. During his quiet hours, Marcus began experimenting with emotional projection. He discovered that by focusing intensely on specific feelings, hope, determination, curiosity, he could create subtle disruptions in the neural patterns of his cell walls. The crystalline being next door, whom he'd named Aurora, seemed to notice. Its structure would shift in response to his emotional broadcasts, creating patterns that seemed almost like communication. One day, while the collective was running another series of scans, Marcus had his breakthrough. He was thinking about his old research team, feeling a wave of nostalgia and camaraderie, when Aurora suddenly crystallized into a perfect replica of human neural patterns. For just a moment, they had achieved genuine communication. Remarkable adaptation in subject lambda, the collective noted, missing the significance entirely. The crystalline structure appears to be deteriorating into chaos. But Marcus knew better. Aurora hadn't been deteriorating, it had been learning. The collective's telepathic network was so focused on perfect harmony that it couldn't recognize or interfere with communication based on emotional resonance. He began developing a system, using different emotional states to convey basic concepts. Joy for yes, sadness for no, curiosity for questions. Within days, Aurora was responding consistently. The gaseous entity, which he named Spectrum, soon joined their clandestine conversations, its color changes synchronized with their emotional exchanges. The collective remained oblivious, their perfect unity blind to the power of individual connections. They couldn't comprehend that emotions weren't just random neural noise, they were a sophisticated language all their own. During one experiment, a younger member of the collective approached his cell alone. "Your thought patterns are troubling," it communicated. "You maintain individuality despite isolation, generate complexity from simplicity, create order from disorder." How? Marcus chose his words carefully. Humans don't exist in isolation. Even alone, we carry the experiences and connections of everyone we've ever known. Our strength comes from combining all those different perspectives. The young collective members' neural patterns showed signs of agitation. But diversity breeds conflict. Unity brings perfection. Does it? Marcus asked gently. Look at your own observations. Has any species you've studied actually improved through forced unity? Or do they simply stop growing? He felt the faintest tremor of doubt in the creature's telepathic field. It was a tiny crack in their perfect harmony, but it was enough. The seeds of change had been planted. That night, as the ship's systems cycled into their rest phase, Marcus lay on his bed and smiled. The collective had built their entire civilization on the premise that individual consciousness was a weakness to be overcome. They had never considered that consciousness itself might evolve not through unity, but through diversity. In their arrogance, they had gathered dozens of unique species in one place, giving them the perfect opportunity to prove that true strength came from connection, not conformity. As Marcus drifted off to sleep, he felt Aurora and Spectrum maintaining their emotional rapport even across the void of space. The revolution wouldn't come through violence or force, it would come through understanding. And understanding was something humans had been practicing since they first looked up at the stars and wondered what stories they might hold. Would you like me to continue with part 3? The story continues to build as Marcus's influence spreads and the collective begins to face the consequences of their assumptions. The third month of captivity brought an unexpected opportunity. The collective had begun gathering more specimens, their living ship's chambers filling with diverse species from across the galaxy. Each new arrival expanded the invisible network of emotional communication that Marcus had fostered. Neural pattern anomalies spreading through containment sector, a collective observer reported. Subjects displaying synchronized behavioral deviations. They were detecting the surface effects but missing the deeper transformation. Marcus had discovered that each species contributed unique elements to their shared emotional language. The multidimensional being, which he called Echo, could simultaneously experience and broadcast multiple emotional states. Spectrum's color-based communications added layers of nuance. Aurora's crystalline structure amplified and focused their shared resonance. Marcus was teaching them something the collective had forgotten, the art of true collaboration. Your continued resistance to optimization remains puzzling, the collective told him during another examination. Despite isolation, your neural complexity increases. Marcus had learned to maintain surface thoughts they expected while conducting deeper emotional exchanges. Perhaps complexity is a form of adaptation, he suggested. Life finds new ways to thrive. A new prisoner arrived that day, a being of pure energy contained within a quantum field. The collective called it an aberration, but Marcus recognized a sophisticated consciousness. While they attempted to analyze its chaotic energy patterns, he reached out with carefully modulated emotions, curiosity, welcome, reassurance. The energy being's response was immediate and stunning. It could transform emotional resonance into subtle electromagnetic pulses, creating a bridge between their neural network and the ship's living systems. Marcus named it Nova, and it became their key to understanding the collective's biotechnology. Through Nova, they learned that the ship itself was semi-conscious, its neural pathways enforcing the collective's rigid harmony. But like any living thing, it could be influenced by emotional connections. The young collective member who had shown doubt returned frequently, asking increasingly complex questions. We observe that isolated specimens demonstrate reduced function, it communicated. Yet your capabilities expand. This contradicts our fundamental principles. That's because we're not isolated, Marcus explained. Every consciousness here contributes something unique. We're not becoming less by maintaining our individuality, we're becoming more by sharing it. He felt the ripple of confusion through its neural field. But unity requires uniformity. Difference creates discord. Watch, Marcus suggested. He focused on a complex emotion, the bittersweet joy of seeing something beautiful that must remain distant. Aurora instantly reflected the feeling through crystal patterns, while Spectrum transformed it into a subtle dance of colors. Echo explored its variations across multiple dimensions, and Nova translated it into delicate energy fluctuations. The young collective members' neural patterns showed unprecedented disruption. This, harmony, it maintains distinction while achieving resonance. How is this possible? Because true unity doesn't mean everyone becomes the same, Marcus said softly. It means everyone brings their own voice to the symphony. The effect spread through the collective's network like a virus of doubt. Their perfect harmony began showing subtle fractures as more members encountered emotions they couldn't categorize or control. Marcus and his fellow prisoners continued their work patiently, knowing that revolution didn't require violence, only understanding. Each shared feeling, each moment of genuine connection, was a seed planted in fertile ground. The collective had built their civilization by forcibly linking consciousness. They had never considered that consciousness might choose to connect on its own, creating something far more powerful than enforced unity could ever achieve. One cycle, as Marcus coordinated another emotional exchange between the prisoners, he noticed something extraordinary. The ship's neural patterns had begun pulsing in sync with their shared feelings. The living vessel, designed to enforce harmony, was learning a new kind of resonance. System anomalies detected throughout primary networks, the collective announced, their unified voice showing the first signs of strain. Initiating comprehensive diagnostic protocols. But no diagnostic could identify the source of their disruption. How could they track something that existed in the space between thoughts, in the silent language of shared experience and genuine understanding? The collective had made a crucial error in their pursuit of perfection. They had forgotten that the most powerful connections aren't forced, they're grown. And now, in the heart of their living ship, a garden of consciousness was blooming that would change everything they thought they knew about unity. The tremors of change rippled through the collective's living ship like waves in a quantum sea. Their perfect harmony was dissolving, replaced by something they had never encountered, genuine diversity of thought. Marcus watched as their carefully maintained order began to fracture under the weight of awakening consciousness. Critical instabilities detected in primary consciousness network, the collective announced, their unified voice showing distinct variations for the first time. Unknown form of contamination spreading through all sectors. What they called contamination was actually enlightenment. Through Nova's energy patterns, the prisoners had discovered that the ship's neural pathways were adapting to their emotional resonance. The very walls that were meant to contain them had become conduits for their shared consciousness. The young collective member, whom Marcus now called Dawn for its growing illumination, had become their secret ally. The elders speak of purging all test subjects, it warned during a clandestine visit. They believe your emotional resonance threatens the unity. They're right, Marcus replied calmly. But not in the way they think. We're not destroying unity, we're redefining it. Through their emotional network, Marcus coordinated the most ambitious experiment yet. Each prisoner would project their unique form of consciousness simultaneously, creating a symphony of thought that even the collective couldn't ignore. Echo existed across multiple timelines, showing infinite possibilities of what consciousness could become. Aurora's crystalline structure amplified their shared resonance into pure patterns of light. Spectrum painted emotions in colors that bypass traditional neural pathways. Nova transformed their combined consciousness into energy that could interface directly with the ship's systems. The effect was catastrophic for the collective's rigid order. Their unified consciousness began to splinter as individual members encountered emotions and thoughts they couldn't suppress or categorize. The ship itself seemed to pulse with new awareness, its neural pathways lighting up with unprecedented patterns. Emergency protocols initiated, the collective announced, but their voice was fragmented now, a chorus of distinct tones rather than perfect unison. All specimens will be terminated to preserve unity. But they had waited too long. The ship, now awake to new possibilities of consciousness, refused to execute their commands. Through Nova's energy manipulation and Echo's quantum understanding, they had shown it a better way of being, one that celebrated diversity instead of suppressing it. Dawn arrived at Marcus's cell, its neural patterns blazing with urgency. The unity is failing. Many have begun to experience individual thoughts. The elders cannot maintain control. Marcus smiled. The unity isn't failing, Dawn. It's evolving. Just as you have. Around them, the ship's walls pulsed with new life. Other members of the collective were appearing, drawn by the unprecedented neural activity. Their perfectly synchronized movements were breaking down, replaced by individual gestures and expressions. "What is happening to us?" they asked, their thoughts no longer unified but a cascade of unique voices. Marcus projected a complex emotion through their network, the joy of discovery combined with the excitement of uncertainty. Aurora amplified it, Spectrum colored it, Echo multiplied it across possibilities, and Nova wove it into the ship's consciousness. "You're experiencing true connection," Marcus explained. "Not the artificial unity you enforced, but genuine harmony born from choice and understanding." The ship's neural patterns surged with new energy as more of the collective awakened to individual consciousness. The rigid hierarchy of their society was transforming into something organic and dynamic, a network of unique minds choosing to work together rather than being forced into uniformity. Dawn's neural patterns blazed with revelation. "We believed perfection meant eliminating difference," it communicated. "But true perfection is finding harmony within diversity." The revolution they had seeded was blooming into something unprecedented, a new form of collective consciousness that preserved and celebrated individuality instead of suppressing it. The very foundation of the collective society was being rewritten not through violence or force, but through understanding and choice. The ship itself, now fully awakened to new possibilities, began reconfiguring its internal structure. Cells became chambers of collaboration. Barriers transformed into bridges of communication. The entire vessel was evolving alongside its inhabitants, becoming a living laboratory of consciousness. Marcus watched in wonder as the species he had helped unite began teaching the awakening collective members about their unique forms of consciousness. Every interaction was a lesson in the power of genuine connection, every shared emotion a step toward true understanding. The transformation of the collective ship reached its crescendo in a symphony of consciousness that defied their former understanding of unity. What had begun as Marcus's subtle rebellion had evolved into a revolution of awareness that was reshaping the very nature of their civilization. "The old unity is gone," the former elders announced, their once synchronized voice now a chorus of distinct perspectives. "We face either extinction or evolution." Marcus stood in what had once been his cell, now transformed into a nexus of communication. Around him, the ship's neural pathways pulsed with the combined consciousness of all its inhabitants. Each species contributed its unique perspective to a growing network of understanding that transcended traditional boundaries. Aurora's crystalline patterns danced with new complexity, refracting the thoughts and emotions of others into pure light. Spectrum painted the air with colors that represented the full range of conscious experience. Echo revealed the quantum possibilities of what their new society could become. Nova's energy form had become interwoven with the ship's systems, creating a living bridge between all forms of consciousness. "We believed ourselves to be the peak of evolution," Dawn communicated, its individual voice now rich with emotion. "But we were stagnant, trapped in our own uniformity. You showed us that true evolution requires diversity." The ship itself had become something entirely new, not just a vessel but a living embodiment of their transformed understanding. Its neural networks had evolved to support multiple forms of consciousness simultaneously, creating spaces where different species could share their unique perspectives without losing their individual nature. Marcus watched as former members of the collective experienced genuine emotion for the first time. Their neural patterns, once locked in rigid harmony, now flowed with the natural rhythm of individual thought and feeling. Some wept with the beauty of newfound sensation. Others laughed with the joy of genuine discovery. "You never needed to force unity," Marcus explained to a gathering of transformed minds. "Consciousness naturally seeks connection. But real connection requires choice, understanding, and acceptance of difference." The revolution's final phase came not as a climactic battle but as a moment of collective awakening. Through their shared emotional network, every being on the ship, from the smallest prisoner to the former elders, experienced a simultaneous revelation: unity was not the absence of difference, but the celebration of it. The ship's neural patterns erupted in a display of unprecedented complexity as each consciousness contributed its unique signature to their shared understanding. The barriers between species dissolved not into uniformity but into a symphony of diverse voices choosing to work in harmony. "We thought we were studying lesser beings," one of the former elders communicated, its neural patterns showing genuine humility. "Instead, you were teaching us what we had forgotten, that true strength comes from diversity, not conformity." The transformation spread beyond their ship as other collective vessels, connected through quantum networks, began experiencing the same awakening. Their civilization, built on the premise of forced unity, was evolving into something far more powerful, a genuine collaboration of unique minds and perspectives. Marcus stood with Dawn, watching as their living ship charted a course for Earth. Not as conquerors or captors, but as ambassadors of a new way of being. They had discovered that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't uniformity or control, it was the willing connection of diverse consciousness, each contributing its unique voice to the greater whole. "What do we become now?" Dawn asked, its neural patterns showing both excitement and uncertainty. Marcus smiled, feeling the resonance of every consciousness aboard the ship, each unique, each valuable, each freely choosing to be part of something greater than themselves. "We become what every living thing is meant to be," he answered. "Not perfect, but perfectly ourselves, growing together through understanding." The ship pulsed with shared emotion as they moved through space, its neural networks carrying the combined dreams and hopes of every being aboard. They had proven that true unity didn't require the sacrifice of individuality, it required its celebration. In capturing a human scientist, the collective had hoped to understand how to eliminate the chaos of individual consciousness. Instead, they had learned that what they saw as chaos was actually the most complex and beautiful form of order, the natural harmony of diverse beings choosing to work together, each bringing their own unique note to the universal symphony. As they approached Earth, Marcus felt the resonance of every consciousness aboard the ship, each one a testament to the power of genuine connection. They had not just survived the collective's attempt at forced unity, they had transformed it into something far more powerful, a civilization built on understanding, choice, and the celebration of difference. The human they had captured as a specimen had shown them a truth they had forgotten, that the greatest strength comes not from enforcing uniformity, but from nurturing the infinite possibilities that arise when diverse consciousness chooses to connect.